Hello, this is Tia and welcome to another video. Today we're doing another chapter inside of Hermitcraft season Clockwork. And yeah, we are going to be reading chapter 4, episode 1. Yeah, it's still Gem's perspective. As you can probably tell by the title of this video. Yeah, let's get right into it, shall we? Chapter 4. Gem sat alone in a dimly lit cell, not bound by any restraints, as she sat in the cold hard cot provided for her. She wasn't sure how long she'd been down here, but she'd woken up here. The only real lights in the room were the spare torches in the corners and a light coming from the hallway. There were no windows in the cell, no sign telling her where she was. As she looked around the room, she had spent however long just waiting, trying to figure out if there was a routine or pattern the guards had when patrolling the hallway. So far it seemed fairly random, but she couldn't be so sure, because there hadn't been as much time to pass. She wasn't sure if she should wait, or just try to figure out how to get out. No one had been able to tell her what was going on in the world outside. She wasn't even sure if she was in the same world. It would make sense for the men to try and do that, so it would make it harder for her friends or the cause to find her. Again, she wondered if she would manage to get out on her own. Could manage to get out on her own. Was worth a shot. She got up from the cot and walked over to the cell door, peeking out on either side to see if she could see anything. When she saw no guards passing down the hallway, she smiled, slinking back as she went into a dark corner and pulled out one of the stone brick walls, revealing something she knew would be there. There were many secrets about the cause and the YouTubers as a whole. She took out a lever, a sword, and a shield. She closed back the brick and stored away her little trinkets. Carrying the lever to the door, she placed the lever on the wall next to the door as she checked the hallway again. It still remained empty. She even stared longer just to make sure there were no invisibility bubbles in the area. Absolutely nothing. The hallway was quiet, almost too quiet, as she flipped the lever and stepped out into the bright hallway, looking back and forth before walking down, wondering where the men would hide her stuff. Of course, it was always possible they burned it all, but she never could be so sure. She had to at least try to see if she could find it. She didn't have much of that time, though. She wandered down the hall until she noticed the door. It was slightly opened. She quietly peeked through. It seemed to be a meeting room of some kind, which appeared empty. There was a single book sitting on a large table. As she opened the door and slipped inside, walking over as she looked over her shoulder warily, picking up the book as she opened it, scanning the pages. It didn't take her long to realize it had some sort of notes on it, as well as some blueprints. As she squinted to read the small lettering, she wasn't sure what it was or how it had gotten here. She closed it, pocketing it as she walked out of the meeting room area, glancing back and forth nervously. Still no sign of the men. This didn't feel right. Was she being led to a trap? A test? Was she doing exactly what Mr. A wanted? Where was the man? Where was the man who had taken her? Had he gone up to hurt more people? To hurt more of her friends? She closed her eyes as she pushed out the image of Green's pale face looking up at her. He laid there helplessly on the floor. Was he okay? Someone found him in time? Or had she failed? Had they failed? She swallowed as she opened her eyes again, walking down the hallway, seeing a door at the end. It was a dark oak door, which stood out against the pure white walls. The hallway wasn't fairly large, but it still felt large, expanding just out of her reach as she quietly walked down the hall, her feet making painfully loud sounds as they did so, seeing as it was the only thing she could hear. Suddenly she heard a shout of alarm from behind as she glanced over her shoulder, seeing one of the soldiers had finally decided to show up as he opened the door down the hall, running towards her. "Stop right there!" he shouted angrily as she gasped, beginning to run as he hollered for backup. As more doors opened and the sound of feet running behind her as she reached the door and opened it, revealing a stairwell as she climbed up them, daring not to look back as the door slammed behind her as she ran up to what appeared to be the main floor. She spotted a door that led to the outside. "Hey, you! What are you doing out of your cell?" A voice shouted to her right as she looked to see one of the men walking towards her as she bolted for the door, wishing she had her wings and rockets so she could just fly away. She didn't know. All she had were her own 2 feet. "Come, get back here! You have to catch me first!" she exclaimed as she made it to the door and opened it, shouting in surprise as she vaulted backwards as a man stood in front of her, walking her way out. He was tall, with broad shoulders. I don't know how that slipped through. Wearing a black leather jacket as the man smiled, his dark eyes looking at her. "Going somewhere?" the man asked as he raised an eyebrow, grabbing her by the wrist before she could back away. "Let me go!" she demanded fiercely as she struggled to pull away from the man as he pulled her away from the door. "I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to talk. That's all," the man said calmly. "I'm not talking," she said defiantly as the man pulled her into a nearby room. She was released, falling to the floor as she slowly got to her feet. The man leaned against the door. "Oh, I'm sure you will be talking when we're done here," the man said with a smile as she looked around the room. It was relatively plain and large, mostly empty apart from some barrels and unused furniture. "Why don't you have a seat?" "No," she replied as she crossed her arms. "You don't get to tell me what to do. I want to see my friends." "You will," the man said slowly with a smile. "Trust me, you will." She narrowed her eyes. "Who are you and what do you want?" "I'm sure you've heard quite a bit about me," the man said thoughtfully as he pushed himself away from the door as he walked towards her, putting a hand on her shoulder, tightening its grip when she tried to pull away. The man pushed her towards one of the unused armchairs just sitting in a corner. It looked like it hadn't been tended to for months, dust coating the fabric and floating around the object. There also seemed to be chew marks on the cushions and legs of the chair from any rodents that had decided to snack on it. "That I've done a lot of things to hurt people like you. People who think they're superior and can rule us commoners around. You do know, telling me that my kind is selfish and all and try to get to me won't work," she said simply. "You think you can sweet talk me into talking about my friends? Forget it." "Give you a choice," the man said, and he gestured for the chair as she shook her head. "I knew about those little trinkets in your cell. I have for many months. Do you want to know how I know?" "Someone told you?" she guessed. "Yes," the man chuckled. "Even if you think you can keep me from the information I want to know, I will get it. I'm just giving you a choice to tell me without pain." "Why are you giving me special treatment?" she questioned as she raised an eyebrow. Somehow she felt like this was a test. An uneasy feeling filled her as she looked over at the man. "What did you do?" "What makes you say I did anything?" the man asked as he tilted his head, gesturing towards the room. "Look around. There's nothing here. No buttons, no levers, no secret compartments. Absolutely nowhere that I could hide something from you." "There could be a guard outside the door," she pointed out. "To be fair, that is true. Because there's..." The man chuckled. "I assure you, though, there's no one here apart from me and you." "I don't believe you," she said firmly, noticing there was a window opening to a vast field, helicopter resting on a helipad, the rotor still unmoving. Though the more she looked at it, the more she could have sworn she'd seen movement. "Of course you don't," the man chuckled. "Why would I need to make any threats to you if you're willing to talk to me? I won't tell your friends." "I told you," she said simply. "You're not getting a word out of me. Even if you torture me, I won't talk." "I see," the man said as he narrowed his eyes before he smiled. "Do you want to come with me, then? I want to show you something." "No, I don't want to," she said confidently. The man sighed. "You don't want to cooperate with me, then?" "Yep," she replied. "Do you know what I'm capable of?" he pressed. "I do," the YouTuber confirmed. You've hurt my friends before, after all." "Ah, yes," the man smiled. "You know I couldn't do it again, seeing as I now have more recruits and friends at my disposal." "What do you mean?" she asked nervously. "Where do you think all the guards went? Off-world?" The man chuckled. "Follow me and I'll show you." "Fine," she sighed as the man's smile widened. She followed him out of the room and down the hallway as they came to a door. The door, as the man opened it, revealing a table and chairs with what appeared to be a monitor on the side of the room with a control panel. She walked inside as she looked at the screen. It showed the main hall, where most of the cause had their meetings. The view only showed the outside of the building, and she saw people inside, moving around or chatting around around tables. "Apparently your friends, the cause, are having a big meeting about something today," the man replied, "leaving a good portion of your fellow hermits on their own. Of course you know none of them actually are, but you get my point." "What are you going to do?" she questioned nervously. The man walked over to the control panel and looked over at it for a moment before looking back at her. "This camera is connected to one of my men. There's a portion of them waiting outside the hall to attack. Once I give a signal, the possibility of a fight breaking out. A deadly one." "Why are you doing this?" she asked, as she went closer to the monitor, squinted. "Trying to see into the windows?" She bit back a smile as she realized what she was looking at, and she looked over at the man. "It's your choice," the man offered. "You can tell me what I want to know, or people will get hurt. You know I know where your friends are. You know I know how to hurt them. Really hurt them. Consider this a warning if you choose not to comply." "Go ahead," she shrugged. "If you know us so well, then you already know we won't betray each other." The smile turned into a scowl. "Very well, then." He pressed a button as a moment passed before she watched his TNT launch through the air as the camera moved towards the building. As parts of it exploded, as the soldiers charged through, as the camera revealed what was inside. She could see the look of shock on the man's face as he looked at the scene before him. There was a bunch of armor stands being moved by pistons, back and forth, wearing leather armor, and a head. Mop head, in fact. Work of some of her friends, indeed. She looked back, took a step back, and watched the man staring at the screen, trying not to laugh, knowing it would only anger the man further as he turned to her. "Did you know about this?" "No, sir," she replied, as she held her hands up. "I did not. I'm just surprised you didn't check to see they were actually in there." The man frowned as he shook his head. "My men told me they were." "Perhaps they were," she shrugged. "Honestly, you can't believe what you see all the time." "Well, they still don't know where you are, do they?" the man asked as he raised an eyebrow. "They might," she said with a sneaky smile. Almost as if on cue, there was an explosion on the other side of the building as she steadied herself, nearly being knocked off her feet. "Looks like we have company," the man scowled as he lunged at her, Jem jumping back as she ran for the door, grabbing at the handle and turning it. They had been locked as she struggled to turn in the lock, just as the man grabbed her from behind. "Care to join them?" "Let me go!" she demanded, and he held his grip on her firmly as he unlocked the door and opened it, stepping out into the hallway as some figures peered around the corner. "Jem!" one of the cause members exclaimed as she squirmed against the man holding her. She heard swords being extended, looking up to see that some of the escorts had in fact arrived to rescue her. "You know I'm doing this to you." "I'm sorry, but this is the end of the episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you guys so much for watching. And yes, I will see you in the next one, whatever that might be. Goodbye.